Hi, this is Brandon Robertson, and welcome to this introduction on configuring T1 controller cards between Cisco routers. First off, I'd like to thank you for viewing this video. This will be a very brief video. We'll be discussing just the different line coding methods and the framing and just the basic quick configuration and setup of your T1 controller cards and your serial interfaces for those T1 controller cards. Up here on the screen we have router 2 and router 3. Let's go ahead and log into router 2 and do a show run. These two routers, they're connected via a T1 crossover cable to simulate our T1 WAN connection. Let's see here, we see here where the T1 controller card is inserted into the router, and right off the bat these serial interfaces, they're for another module that's in the router. One note is when you configure the T1 controller card, after you configure the parameters, it'll give you another serial interface to configure for that controller card. Just note that a T1 controller card is seen as a serial interface on your router. And let's go ahead and go into the basic configuration setup. We'll go config T, and then we'll go controller. We'll use iOS help T1, and it's going to want our slot number. Now this is a dual T1 controller card, so we'll go 0, whack 0. It's never hurts to use iOS help. It's always a good thing. Alright, so now we're into the T1 controller card configuration portion. And let's take a look at the options we have here. We got a whole bunch of options, but there's really only 3 that we're going to use to bring our controller card up, and those 3 we're going to do line code, and we're going to do framing, and we're also going to set our channel groups. Now let's see here, line code. Specify the line coding method for a DS1 link. Let's go into line code. See what options we got. We got AMI and B8ZS. Now, what this is, B8ZS is referred to as bipolar 8-0 substitution, also called binary 8-0 substitution. Could be called clear channel or clear channel 64. This is also it's an encoding method used for T1 circuits. It'll insert 2 successive ones, kind of the same voltage, referred to as bipolar violation. One important note here is that B8ZS is what we use here in the United States. There's another type of coding that you may run into called HDB3, stand for high density bipolar 3. Now this is used mostly in Japan and Europe. Is what we'll use here is we're going to use the B8ZS method. So we got our B8ZS there. Next, let's go to we're going to select our framing. Let's see what options we got there. We got ESF and SF. Now ESF is a extended super framing. This is the newer standard rather than the old SF super framing. Now the new ESF, which is a T1 standard, is sometimes called a D5 framing. ESF is referred to over its predecessor SF because it includes a CRC, which is a cyclic redundancy check, and bandwidth for the data link channel. Now, this is also used to pass out-of-band data between equipment. It requires the infrequent synchronization other than the earlier SF superframe format. We're going to go in and we're going to select the ESF. Next we got our channel group, and we're going to do channel group 0, and you notice on the screen there we got a loss of down activity. That's because the defaults are set between this T1 controller card on this router and the other on the router that's connecting it. We're going to go time slots, and we're going to select 124. And sometimes you'll need to set a speed after the time slots, and sometimes you won't. You just have to play around with it. It really depends on the way that the service provider has a provision on their end, the terminating equipment. And it's what we're going to do. We're going to do Control Z to back out, do a show run, and let's scroll down here. You see we got our controller card configured. Let's go down, and we should see a new serial. Here it is. Yeah. This is the new serial interface options that we got after figuring the T1 controller card that are available to us. And what we're going to do, we're going to hold off on configuring that with IP. We're going to bounce over to router number 3, configure the other T1 controller card. Config T. If I could spell right, controller T1 0 0. Here's that speed. After we do the question mark after the time slot, you could specify a speed. And normally, if you put a speed in here, you would want to put 64K, because 64 times 24 is 1536, which equals a actual T1 speed. Sometimes it's really there's also the 1.544, which is what you'll see for a true T1 speed, but there's actually 8 bytes of overhead for control signaling. So what you really want to do to properly provision it is put 1536. It really won't make a performance difference one way or the other, but 1536 is the actual true method of configuring your speed if you ever have to do that. Sometimes you have to configure the speed to make the line come up, and again, that's depending on how the ISP or the service provider has provisioned the circuit on their terminating equipment. We'll go into that, Control Z back out, do a show run, and let's see. We notice that our controller card came back up for that serial interface, which is associated with that T1 controller card. There's our configuration. We bounce back over here. You notice that we've got the same matching configuration, both routers. And it should give us the option here. We should see our serial 00:0. There it is. Now let's go ahead and configure IP. We'll go over and start router 2 for this one. And we'll just, as long as you put the IP addresses on the same subnet, you can bring up your link. We're going to go config T, interface, serial 00:0, IP address. We'll just use 10.1.1.10 for this link. 24-bit mask. No shut. We'll bounce over to router number 3. Let's configure its into the circuit. Up. If I could put in my mask right. Go shut. Do a WR to save our work. We'll go back over here number 2. Do a WR to save our work. And we should have IP connectivity. In this router we configured it for the 10.1.1.10. The other is 10.1.1.11. So as soon as it's finished saving, here it is. Let's see if we can ping. Yeah, and we're good. It's always good to go back to the other end and make sure you got IP connectivity both ways. And we are good. And my friends, that is basic T1 controller card configuration on Cisco routers. I'd like to thank you for viewing this video and have a pleasant day.